Hello my friends, in today's video we will take a look at Samyang AF 14mm F2.8 FE in combination with Sony A7IV. This was one of the first Samyang autofocus lenses for Sony E-mount and now you can have it at a very reasonable price. The reason why I'm reviewing it in 2022 with Sony's latest hybrid camera is that it is still the only budget-friendly 14mm F2.8 lens with autofocus for Sony E-mount. In this video, we will take a look at how it works with newer Sony sensors, with Sony's latest autofocus system and in-body image stabilization, and we will try to find out whether you should consider getting one. 14mm is an extremely wide angle. First of all, it means that you can fit a lot into the frame. It also means that there is basically no emphasis on the subject unless you are very close to it. You also need to be extra careful with foregrounds because those are very emphasized. This focal length is mainly useful for landscapes, cityscapes, architecture, and interiors. At f2.8 it is fairly suitable for low light shooting and it can even blur the background a little bit if the subject is really close. 14mm AF is 97.5mm long and it weighs half a kilogram, which is adequate for this type of lens. The build quality is very good. The whole construction is metal except the integrated lens hood, which is plastic. The front element is concave and it would be exposed otherwise, so integrated lens hood is necessary to protect it. Much like most 14mm lenses, it doesn't have a conventional filter thread. The mount is metal as well, which is to be expected, but there is no weather sealing gasket. Despite that, it does have some degree of weather sealing. The lens cap is included in the box, it attaches over the lens hood and it has proper release buttons. Regarding the control elements, there is just the focusing ring. This is an ultra-wide lens, so manual focusing is very easy. The focusing ring is smooth and the response is linear, so I have no complaints in this regard. So how about the optical qualities? I have tested this lens with a 33MP sensor in Sony A7IV. This sensor isn't that demanding when it comes to the optical qualities of the lenses, so let's take a look at how it works together. The central sharpness at f2.8 is very solid. It isn't quite as sharp as some of the latest lenses, but I can't complain. f4 looks basically the same. There is moderate improvement in contrast at f5.6. f8 and f11 look very similar. The diffraction only starts at f16. The corners are soft at f2.8. There is also some amount of chromatic aberration. f4 isn't much better. The corner sharpness starts to improve at f5.6 and it is very solid at f8. The corner sharpness at f11 is very good. f16 still looks basically the same. The conclusion of my sharpness testing is that you can use f2.8 to f5.6 if you need to get more light to the sensor and you don't need exceptional corner sharpness. f8 to f16 provides very solid optical performance across the frame, so I definitely recommend stopping down for landscapes or architecture. The amount of distortion is pretty standard for this type of lens. There is a moderate amount of barrel distortion that can be fixed by profile corrections. The amount of vignetting is relatively high at wider apertures. It can also be fixed by profile corrections, but it does affect the image quality in the corners. The real-world images basically reflect the testing scene. You will get very nice output as long as you stop down to about f8. The color reproduction is also pleasant in combination with A7IV. The minimum focus distance is 20 cm, which translates to about 0.12 times magnification. The image quality at the minimum focus distance is pretty good as well, although I recommend stopping down for maximal sharpness. At f2.8 it can separate the subject and somehow blur the background as long as it is fairly close to the lens. The bokeh is basically what you would expect from an ultra-wide f2.8 lens. 14mm f2.8 was Samyang's first autofocus lens for Sony E-mount, but it fortunately works very well in combination with A7IV. The autofocus system has a pretty easy job because the depth of field is naturally very deep. The autofocus is fast, accurate, and consistent. It works very well even in low light or backlit situations. The autofocus settings make a huge difference on A7 IV with any lens, so as always I recommend trying those out. The autofocus mode is not completely silent, but it is quiet enough for most use cases. It still may be caught by in-camera microphone, but usage with shotgun microphone should be fine. As expected, this lens is not stabilized, but the in-body image stabilization in A7 IV is more than sufficient at this kind of focal length. Static shots look basically like on a tripod, and it can even smooth out larger movements, including the walking, very effectively. The amount of focus breathing is very low. There is some, but it is a lot less than we usually see with ultra-wide lenses of this type. To sum up, Samyang 14mm F2.8 FE is a solid ultra-wide lens. It offers ultra-wide focal length and autofocus at a reasonable price. Despite that it was released a while ago, there aren't really any alternatives to this lens. If you want an affordable 14mm lens with autofocus for Sony E-mount, this is it. The central sharpness is very good right from f2.8, and if you stop down to about f8, you will get very decent image quality across the frame. The build quality is also solid. The autofocus works great in combination with A7 IV. The downsides are the image quality in the corners at wider apertures and missing weather sealing gasket. Being the oldest Samyang AF lens, I can say that it holds up pretty well. If you are looking for a budget-friendly 14mm lens with autofocus for your A7 III or A7 IV, I can still recommend it. You will just need to stop down to get the maximal image quality across the frame. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.